Hey, everyone, we're doing a roundtable discussion. We'll see how this goes on Zoom. We'll try. If anyone has any questions, if you can type it in the chat box, I will try to read it and then we can chime in.
Okay, I believe I'm sharing my screen here. Can everybody see that?
Yeah.
Okay, so probably the best place to start with this one is this House bill's been out there for a little while now. It just went into full effect a few days ago, the start of October, to where each municipality has to, if they're going to restrict them, they have to have it updated in their ordinances and, you know, have all their ducks in a row, so to speak, to restrict where accessory dwelling units can go. Is anybody, let's start with, is anybody not familiar with this House bill and what it entails and what it says? Or has everybody got a fairly good idea of what's in it?
I think our city just, we wrote an ordinance in aligned with the Eternals, and we just got it adopted about a month and a half ago. And so we've only had one application, and we also had a consultant help us when it was written. So out of all the 38 pages, we've read them, but I think there's some areas that you can adopt or elect not to out of some of the options, but I don't know if any other cities adopted one yet. Here,
so my understanding of this bill was that if your city or municipality doesn't have something in place by October 1st, it's kind of wide open, that if you don't get on it and get those restrictions put in place in your code, then it's fair game, it's open season. So my city here in Saratoga, we just recently adopted a new ordinance just before the deadline. I still have lots of questions on its implementation and enforcement, and that's what I would like to hear from our members, is if they know who's going to be tracking and who's going to be enforcing what and how and that kind of stuff. So just as an example, here in Saratoga, we went to the HOAs, is my understanding, or they approached us. A lot of the HOAs here in the city already had in their CC&Rs that, you know, basement rentals or ADUs were not permitted anyways. And so they wanted to make sure that in the exemption list for the city, according to the bill, the city could restrict it to 25%, could be excluded from allowing these. So when I say 25% exclusion, that means it's just not allowed, regardless if your lot size is big enough and everything else, it's just not allowed. And so almost, I want to say it's like 8% of the city or something right now is excluded from this, meaning they can't have them. It's just not permitted. We gave anybody that currently has one, because we know they're out there, right? I don't think that that's a surprise to anybody to know that they're out there. We just don't know about them because we didn't require any kind of registration or review. It was just kind of a, if you get caught with it kind of thing, you know, if your neighbors tattle on you, so to speak, that's when we would, you know, be notified of them. So we've given a 12-month registration period, kind of if you have one and we don't know about it, now's your chance to get in, you know, without penalty kind of thing. And then, so my question for the group, I guess, is, did your cities implement something along those same lines, give kind of a grace period for the existing ones? And then have you established a process for surveys, or is it complaint based only, or are you going to be knocking on every door of the city to see if they have one outside of that time frame? And how is the membership, if it's in your scope of responsibility, going to enforce it? Does anybody else have?
I can kind of explain what we did. So we have another abutting city that is heavily populated, and they did one. They adopted one, and they also adopted a grace period. They have a 12-month grace period that their town's small enough that they knew where the illegal ones were and was going to give them 12 months to comply. And I don't think during that first period, whoever signs on to their city, they don't have to pay for the first year for their application. And I think that they were actually asking 25. I don't know if they stuck with it or not, but they were proposing 25% of a residential impact fee for the fee of the application. When
What, 25%, meaning like the value of the home, or like off the tax
25%
assessor?
of the impact fees for a new residential development. So if the impact fees are 10,000, they would be collecting 25% of that for the application fee. We talked with them a little bit, and our city council had a difference of opinion. We have a application fee, and there's no grace period, and it's a $50 fee to sign on. We adopted internals only, and they are only allowed in the single family zones, none of the multifamily zones or anything like that. And in enforcement, we're not doing the door knocking. And if somebody calls and like a complaint based only, if somebody calls, we adopted a process that we would give a notice in a hearing. And so we would notice them that the city's going to potentially lien your property to a fee schedule that's in our city ordinance. I believe it was like $100 a day, and lien them after the appeal, or the lien would happen first, and then they'd be given a notice to a hearing. That would be done by our appeal authority, where they can make a decision. They can appeal if they actually have one or not. And our attorney had an issue with that. His issue with that is that, okay, so your only enforcement action that you're having is you're gonna lien their property, and then that lien associates with a fine, and it can accumulate and keep accumulating. But if it's a property that somebody owns and they are in one of those reverse mortgages, it doesn't have an impact on them. And that's one thing that he said, that enforcement, they have nothing to lose. The person that has a reverse mortgage, they're not losing anything. But one thing to keep in mind that I might want that share, that our city, they can't, the property owner, the owner of that property on record has to be a resident at that house. They can't buy a house and turn it into internal dwelling accessory unit and make it essentially a multifamily when they're absent. Right.
Yeah. So we did some. So I think that's actually in the language of the House bill, that it has to be an owner occupied structure. And one of the things that came up during our discussions was, I don't know how other cities have addressed this, but is what happens when you have a homeowner that lives there and has a rental unit. they've registered it, they've paid their fees, they've done everything the right way. And all of a sudden they decide or get a calling that they're going to go on a mission. What happens to the property then? Because if they leave and go on their mission someplace, what happens? Because now it's no longer owner occupied for an extended period of time. What happens? And so we've put into our ordinances that they have to, notify us that they've, been called to do a mission or whatever they got going on. And if I'm looking for the language right now, but it basically says like if it's going to be an extended vacancy, that they're not going to be allowed. It basically just reverts back to, sorry, you don't live there. And then when you come back, you could, in the absence, you could rent the home as just as a full rental, in accordance with our code. But once you come back, it turns back into an ADU kind of thing. So they wouldn't be allowed to vacate it for, wherever they're going for an extended period of time, and then just move in another family in their absence, basically. So
I'm from the city of Taylorsville, and we have a similar issue, but not just a leave of absence, but what if it's owned by a corporation and they've already been operating as, an upstairs, downstairs. It's been, we call it them illegal rentals, but now they're going to be legal, except it's owned by a corporation. So the owner doesn't live there. We were wondering what people are going to be doing about that.
I would suspect not even giving them an application, even if it's written into the ordinance that the owner occupied, and we have that written in there, we wouldn't even offer them an application, and we would start a compliance, a resolution to it that they would need to come into compliance.
So they would either need to turn it illegal. It would either need to turn into a single family home, or they would need to sell it to someone who lived on one of the floors, right? I mean, technically.
That would be, they would be able to do it that way if one of the people bought it and they were the owner occupied.
And we were also worried about people who turn their basement into an ADU or make an ADU and then they sell it. So it is owner occupied now, but now they sell it to someone else. So then you have another problem later on down the road.
Right. Well, and so at least for me, at least in my view, corporations are, you might be the owner, but you don't live there. So therefore, even in the language of the bill, it says it has to be owner occupied. So that just shuts the whole thing down right from the start. Now, if they sell the house to one of the owners, and actually in our ordinance, and I don't think this is in the house, the bill itself, we actually say that the owner has to own at least 50% interest in the property. So I guess they could get into a situation where, the corporation sells 50% to the homeowner, gets them on the deed for the property or something, and then it becomes legal again, because then it turns back into an owner occupied type of a deal. I doubt something like that's going to happen, but I guess it's in the realm of possibility. So like we deal, I'm sure they're out there in other cities too. We deal with a lot of trusts and that kind of stuff, where it was a family trust that actually owns the property. Well, you could have 100 people in that trust that all own a portion, but nobody lives there, or one of those family members lives there. And so I think that would almost be a case by case if you run into something like that, try and figure out if it's a trust, who owns the majority, does anybody own the majority, you know what I mean, and kind of go from there. But typically with those trust properties, I don't see something like an ADU going in anyways. It's the larger families that have a ton of kids and a bunch of grandparents living there anyways. So that the house is pretty well stacked to the brim, if you will, with occupants anyways. So there's probably not a whole lot of room. Not always, but that's what I see down here in Saratoga anyways. Just looking here because
Brad, do you guys, when you have an application completed, do you record it with the county assessor that is, it has a
Well,
IADU?
so that's part of the problem that we're having right now is we don't really know. I guess is the best way to put it. I mean, we've adopted city codes and ordinances and stuff like that talks about like they have to put in an application with like lot lines, drawings, extra parking spaces. They have to change their addressing to include like if the house number is 1234 Main Street, it has to be 1234 Main Street B. And that's just for our emergency services to know that there's, you know, a separate basement apartment or whatever it is, but there is a ADU there. So we don't really, that's kind of why I wanted to talk to the membership today, was because I don't really know. I don't honestly know where
So
the.
I have a question on how you're proving ADUs, because that's the problem we have in Murray, is that we have people reporting their neighbors have illegal basement ADUs. And then you go and knock the door and people are like, no, that's, you know, it's not a rental. It's my mother-in-law who's living down there. And even though we suspect it's not, how are you making your case?
You know,
I actually have experience with that one, Christina. So previous to this House bill, I'll backtrack just a little bit, not give you the full story here, but received a complaint from a neighbor. Hey, they've got a bunch of people living in their house that they're not related to them. They're renting their basement, you know, the whole thing. And that exact scenario happened to me a couple of years ago here in Saratoga. Was I knock on the door and I talk to the homeowner and I say, you know, do the nice thing. Hey, I got a complaint. You know, can you tell me what's going on? Can we talk about it? Explain the ordinances to them, the whole thing. And skip forward a little while, about a week or so after that discussion, where I thought it was a done deal that, hey, okay, you're good to go, because they claimed it was family members, the whole thing. Okay, you're good to go. Well, I got a call from the complainant when I called back to the complainant to say, hey, you know, this is where we're at with this. You know, this is what they've told me. You know, I'm closing my case and moving on. Basically, there's nothing to see here. And that's when I received more information from the original complainant. Well, what do you mean they didn't tell you about this person, that person, you know, and started naming names. And I said, no, that did not come up in the discussion. So I went back out a second time and I confronted the homeowner on it. I said, you know, basically you lied to me. And, you know, I was trying to have a civil discussion with you to try and figure out what was going on and if there was any merit to this. You lied to me. So now I'm forced to go the next step and, you know, and push the issue. And in discussions with the city attorney here, because, you know, I operate through the civil process, the administrative process, I asked our prosecutor here at the city, I said, you know, I'm not a sworn police officer. You know, I don't have the stop and identify rights and all that like police officers do. I said, so where's the line? You know, can I ask to see ID? Can I ask to see, you know, proof of what they're claiming? And basically the answer that I got was, you can ask anything in the world. You can ask for anything. The problem comes in is when they say no. Right. That's really
so basically you need voluntary admission.
Right. Well,
okay.
And kind of hanging over their head with this whole thing was, I don't know if it's a state law or if it's just our ordinance. I'm not well versed with this, but in our city ordinance, we actually have that lying to an official during an official investigation, review, whatever you want to call it, is like a misdemeanor. So they could be charged criminally. And so when I took the evidence to the prosecutor and said, look, here's the discussion that we had before. This is what they told me. I found out more information, confronted them with it, that they lied to me basically. I said, are you willing to push that? And he says, well, I could, and they need to be made aware that when you're asking questions, even though you're not a sworn police officer, that they have to be truthful with you. It's just as bad as if, a regular officer, sworn officer knocked on their door and they're lying to them. I mean, the line is not blurred nearly as much as I thought it was. He said, you're still an official doing an official business, asking official questions, trying to, do your job and enforce the codes just like anybody. And so what ended up happening with that one was they ended up getting the people out of the house. There wasn't a whole lot of kickback from that. But you fast forward about another 30 days, I get another call from the same complainant saying, hey, those people are gone, but now they've moved more people in, different people this time. And so that kicked off the whole discussion again. Well, you know the rules, you know the ordinances, what are you doing? And to the homeowner's credit, she read the code. She read our ordinances on it, and she was quoting our code. And so at the time, our code quoted domestic servants was the actual phrase were allowed. And she actually said, well, no, they're not renters or tenants. They're my domestic servant. So to her credit, she read the code and tried to use that against us to try and skirt the system. And I said, well, that's fine. Using the new information I had from the city attorney, I said, do you have contracts? Do you have tax statements? Do you have written agreements? Anything to basically prove what you're saying? And she says, yes, I do. And I said, great. If you would like to provide me a copy of it, you can show it to me. I'll take a picture of it with my phone. You can email, you can print me, whatever you want. I'll throw it in the case file, close it, and I'm out of here. I'm done. That's the end of the discussion. And she says, well, I'm not going to show you anything. Nope, I'm not going to show you anything. And so I talked to the city attorney again. I said, well, now what do I do? Because now I'm up against the brick wall. I have the burden of proof, right? The city has the burden of proof that what you're doing is wrong. And so he says, you're absolutely right. But here's the thing, where she's claiming that she has a document to prove her case, it's well within our rights to schedule her for a hearing and make her provide the documents to the court. And if she doesn't want to provide them to the judge, he can order her to provide those documents to the judge. And so I said, okay. So we set her for a hearing in front of the administrative judge. She claimed all kinds of wild accusations. It's religious persecution and I'm a bully and picking on her, and just go right down the list, right? I think we've all probably heard those before. And, the judge wasn't having any of it. He's heard them all before too. So it was nothing new for him. And he basically just said, do you have these documents or not? And if you don't have them, then that's proof enough for me that what you're saying is false and that you just yet again got caught lying to the city. So I mean, again, all said and done, she had her day in court. The judge wasn't having any of it, and those people had to leave too. So I mean, so I guess really with that whole story is, I've been told I can ask anything, but when it comes to actually forcing somebody to give documentation or show, what they're claiming, it really needs to go in front of a judge of some type. And here it's administrative.
So those
the real basics.
Those documents, Brad, they were claimed that they were employees of her, and that's
basically, yeah.
Okay.
Yeah, basically. And that's really how that one got resolved, was she didn't have anything. She didn't have anything. She was just trying to get me to go away. And the intricate part of it is that with a civil proceeding versus a criminal, here in Saratoga, I just have to show a preponderance of evidence. So snap a couple photos, swear me in, under oath, the whole thing. That's pretty much all I got to do. I mean, now if they come up with evidence to the contrary to defend themselves, that's their legal right. They can do that. But I don't have to show that they intended to break the law, that they're intentionally lying. I don't have to prove any of that. And so that's how this one got resolved. It was a long drawn out process, but it was basically, I think you're doing wrong. Your credibility is already out the window anyways, because you've already been proven to lie to me once before and you got caught with it. So really anything you tell me, I don't have to believe you from here on out. You know, I don't have to take you at your word or at face value. You know, I can force you through the administrative court to prove what you're saying. You know, and the way I liken it is kind of the same. You know, I had evidence, I had complaints, I had photographs of vehicles that were not registered to anybody that lived inside the state. You know, I had, you know, other things to go on than just, I think you're doing wrong, or I suspect. You know, there was other telltale signs that I could show to the judge to say, come on, judge, really, you know, all I have to do is show that what I'm saying is more than likely what's happening. And that's a pretty easy standard to meet, at least for my stuff. So
would a justice court judge also be in the same alignment as the administrative law judge? Would he?
No, that's criminal.
Yeah.
So the requirement is much higher to have beyond reasonable doubt, which is much higher.
Yeah.
So that's how my cases get torpedoed, because proving the lie is a lot harder than showing vehicles, unless I can get a tenant to admit openly that I'm a tenant and I'm paying rent, which usually they don't.
Yeah. Well, and you know, that's the difference between the criminal proceeding and, you know, an administrative proceeding is the standard is a lot easier to meet with administrative versus criminal. So, I mean, that's not a solution. And I'm sure different attorneys, different cities will give different opinions as to whether or not I can even ask for that kind of stuff, or if that's, you know, worth pursuing. But where I lay out the facts, even from the previous case, where I've documented and got witness statements and everything saying, hey, these other people are living here. You know, here's a body camera video of me talking to them, so you can actually hear the conversation and what was asked and what was given as far as information goes back and forth. You know, and here they are blatantly lying to me. You know, it's like, okay, well, then the credibility's gone. There's no credibility there. And so, I mean, I think the standard still holds, even with this new House bill, because if I walk up to somebody's door, you know, after receiving a complaint or however I found out about it, typically a complaint, that if, you know, I look at the county records, I know who the owner is. And if it's Bill Smith, as an example, and an older gentleman or a gentleman walks to the door and I say, hi, are you Bill? And he goes, yes, I am. Okay, well, then I kind of take him at his word that you are who I'm talking to, but you bet that I've got my body camera recording all that conversation, because then there's no way for them to come back later and say, well, you didn't talk to me. You know, you did. I never talked to you before. I didn't say that, you know. So, but if somebody comes to the door and I say, hi, are you Bill? And they say, well, no, I'm Edward. Well, Edward, do you know Bill? Well, yeah, he's my landlord. Well, gotcha. You know, I mean, that's, you know, I think that's happened on at least a handful of occasions where somebody that's not the owner of the property comes and then blatantly admits to being a tenant or a renter of some type. And then we can push forward from there.
This House bill has been, can be looked at in a lot of ways, but it is in a position where it can resolve a lot of illegal duplexes anyway in single family zones. If people aren't aware, or they're aware they're breaking the ordinance, and for a $50 application, they can become compliant. provided that they meet all the requirements. So it has that purpose. It fills a void there.
I feel that, just the other day, I didn't take the phone call, but I heard that there was a phone call put into the city. Someone asking for, they're aware of this bill and what it says and the new ordinances here in the city. And they said, well, we already have an ADU in our basement, but we never went through the process and got the proper building permits and everything. So what do we got to do, to make this all legal and right? And basically the answer that I heard anyways was start ripping your walls down because we never inspected anything, or you're not getting it. Because we want to inspect, the inspectors want to inspect the walls. They want to inspect your plumbing and electrical systems. You know what I mean? And I don't know where that one ended up because I didn't take that call. That's just kind of what I heard through the grapevine anyway. So. Does I've been kind of Bogart in this session here. Did anybody else want to chime in with questions, comments?
I would like someone to elaborate on what you just brought up, because that's one of the things that we're running into is something that was built 20 years ago and we're just finding out about it now. I mean, would they need to take it out? Would it, if what we were told is if they had let's say they had a rental license and they got a conditional use permit in the past to have this, but they didn't get the work certified by the building department, they were kind of grandfathering it in so that they could still rent it out as an ADU. But if we never knew about it, we just found out about something, someone just bought a home, it has a basement apartment in it, and they want to rent it out, and no one ever got a building permit. Those are the ones we don't know what to do about. And I don't know if someone could certify the work or have them start tearing stuff down. I know yours was just based on, overhearing a phone call.
I literally just, as a matter of fact, that gentleman sitting right behind me here is our plan reviewer. Let me turn around and ask him if he has an opinion real quick. And hang on just a second, I'll get right back to you. Continue the discussion.
I was going to say, yeah, that sounds like we need someone from the building or the planning department to weigh in on that and say what they think practice would be, because it's true. You don't want to license something that might be potentially unsafe, liability for your jurisdiction.
I think our building official would verify that the egress door was available. There was an egress door available at a minimum. And I think if it was built without inspections in the past, he would walk through it with the fire marshal. Both of them would walk through it and check it and just check that door and probably check some electrical with those little plug-in tester things. And I think he would be willing to sign off on it if it was built way back in the day. The same thing that was just brought up. We have a single family home in a single family zone that the mother finished a basement for her son. The mom has recently passed away and is for sale with 2 units. And I told the real estate agent that contacted us that we could, because of the newly adopted accessory dwelling unit code we have, that she could make the application, and whoever bought it would have to be owner occupied, and they could rent it out under that provision in the single family zone. And the apartment downstairs would likely need to be visited with the building official if there's not a building permit for it. And that was it. I never heard from him again, but I'm guessing that, though, I think we all can relate to it. A lot of the illegal apartments were built just as that, illegally and not getting all the inspections. But You know, the homeowner has a very large burden amongst themselves for doing that and then renting it out that way. I don't know how much liability the city can be stuck with if it was built illegally and approved a dwelling unit in it anyway. But I think that's when the building official would do a walkthrough inspection at best and see that the emergency egress was available. And according to this new HB for the internal ones, a resident isn't even required to update the windows for egress anyway. So it's already a dangerous, in my opinion, it's dangerous that way right out the bat, right out the door.
Yeah, I would have to agree on that, but that's flaws in the bill.
Mm-hmm.
When we were discussing this, we were kind of asking our building department about it, and this is just discussion, nothing's been set in stone, but saying stuff like they might have to have a contractor certify the work, because then the city is not liable. I mean, just someone say it's okay. Once we know about it, somebody needs to say it's okay if they never got a permit. So that's just one idea of making them put the burden on the homeowner to have a contractor look at it.
I
Yeah.
wonder, yeah.
A contractor who's licensed and has all the certifications required by the state, not just their neighbor or whoever.
I wonder if an as-built permit would be a solution to that if an application was made just in as-built and there were just some quick inspection questions for the contractor to fill out and then they sign it and the property owner sign it, might waive all that liability with those signatures.
In Logan City, we would definitely make them obtain a building permit, whether it was recently built or built 20 years ago. And how the building department would handle that, I don't know. They may require some deconstruction, but they may be able to approve the permit as applied for, even though it's been constructed.
Yeah, so in our ordinance that we written right at the beginning, it states before occupancy, city officials shall confirm the internal accessory dwelling unit complies with all applicable building, health, and fire codes as adopted. So they'll be there to make an inspection, but I don't know how much deconstruction.
Just for what it's worth, there's probably a lot of, this covers a lot of range here. Because just for example, I live in West Jordan and I rent out my basement. I called the city, they only had two requirements that for me to rent out my basement. One, that I lived there, and the second, that there be, if there's a door between the two units, the upstairs and the downstairs, it cannot be locked. So those are the only two. Those are the only two things that West Jordan requires. So apparently, there's a lot of, I wouldn't say discrepancy, but there's a wide range of which city is doing what here.
Yeah, we have that same. It has to be. They have to be connected. I denied an application for a zoning review about a month and a half ago, where a guy bought a single family home. And he proposed to tear out the stairs that connected the two levels and install an exterior stair. And he wasn't in a multifamily zone. And I told him the only way he could get his zoning approved was if those stairs stayed inside for the IADU to work. And he resubmitted with the plan with the stairs staying. But yeah, that's what you had just said, Mr. Pond, is that door connection is part of the deal in our city too.
Yeah, but I know they didn't require any inspections or anything. I just called them on the phone. They just said, you're good to go.
Wow.
With our ordinance here in Logan, we have established basically a little cut sheet, and all of it's available on our website. I can send out an email with it if anyone wants to take a look at it, but they've established basically what our requirements are. It's about a 3-page document, goes over where's eligible, no short-term rental, you can't have a separate utility, building permits, possibly landlord license, except for I think we're calling them something different than a landlord nope, it is an ADU landlord license application is what we have named it. And so, yeah, we require site plan, an application for an ADU, and along with that, a declaration of owner occupancy. So we're requiring the owner to certify that they're going to be dwelling in the unit. And I believe our intention is to record it with the property. So yeah, just so you know, our planners and community development manager have established these applications, and basically I call it a cheat sheet of what requirements are and what
To see if you qualify.
to see if you qualify. So you can even read that over before you were to go to apply to see if you even have the extra parking stall, or our minimum lot size is 6,000 square feet. So obviously if you lived on a smaller lot size, you wouldn't even apply.
We
But-
did that too. Brigham City did that.
Yeah, no, it's good to have something in line. We haven't had any applicants so far, but
And in the city of Logan, it's gonna cost approximately $2,000 for an ADU.
yeah, we are charging them an impact fee.
2,000 for the application.
I don't know if that's just the application, but I think that's gonna
That's
be,
the building permit, that's the impact fee.
yeah, that's including a building permit, well, sort of a building permit and
Yeah.
impact fee. I believe if I remember correctly, the impact fee was the highest portion of our cost.
Is
Do
that
you
for
guys-
new?
Oh,
Sorry.
go ahead.
Is that for new and existing ADUs?
So as far as we know, there aren't existing ADUs. They'd essentially be an illegal duplex, and we would just enforce on it as it was overoccupied. And if they wanted to have a solution to that overoccupancy and they met the qualifications for an ADU, they could then come in and apply and possibly remedy that situation and not be overoccupied. But as far as we're concerned, there isn't a legal existing ADU until they've obtained all of these items. So we would just say you're overoccupied, it's an illegal duplex, and they could only have, the max unrelated allowed.
Do you permit detached ADUs in Logan? Like,
I don't
so they're
believe-
not part of the home, they can be built out back?
We do not, as far as my understanding goes, we do not.
And this is all fairly new to us as well. We just received this information late last week, so we've got some homework to do and to study up on what we're going to be requiring as well. But we're not going to be proactively out and about looking for ADUs. That's difficult to do. We're going to be definitely complaint based.
Yeah.
Yeah, that would be good to see what you have, Brooke, and for that ADU thing,
All right.
the cheat sheet.
Yeah, yeah. I will forward out an email. I don't know that.
I have the information.
Oh,
directly.
okay. Maria
Yeah.
has all the information, so.
Yeah, we'll just attach it to this same email for the invitation. And we'll send the info out that we have.
Yeah, might as well share for sure. And we try and make it as basic as we can for, people, homeowners or whatnot, reading so that they can just know, like, oh yeah, we're not going to qualify. We live on a small lot, so.
Mhm.
So after conferring with my colleague here, he was saying that we could potentially require them to cut drywall, open up plumbing, whatever they needed to do to verify that the installation was done up to code. Even if it was 20 years ago or last year or whatever. The basic comes down to that if they didn't pull a permit to finish the basement, you're kind of stuck going down that road probably, just because we can't sign off on it to make it a legal ADU until we verified that the installation was done correctly. So he was saying it really kind of depends on your own cities and your own, what your own processes would be. But here we would probably more than likely anyways, require them to at least open up the wall so we can verify stuff to sign off on it.
Mhm. I think that's what would happen here. I think so.
All right. Pretty good conversation, honestly. I didn't expect this kind of a response from something so mundane as an ADU discussion when I first suggested it. But anybody have any other questions, or we good to go for at least now? I think this will have to come back up again probably pretty soon as cities sort through this stuff and figure out what they're doing with it and how they're doing it. But
I just hope.
Oh, sorry. I'm Brooke Talbot with Logan City, and my coworker Maria Tenna is a part of the UOCA group, but I haven't been added ever. If Christina's here, I was gonna see if I could get invited to the UOCA group as well.
You're part of the membership, but
I'm part of the membership, but I'm not part of the email or any of that.
So I have to apologize. I created a UOCA group in email, and our system's been updated and it's completely kicked out all my contacts. So I've been trying to create the list. So yeah, if you didn't get an email about today's meeting and you want one, please send me an email and I will try and fix that group email problem that I'm having. There's a couple people that for some reason it just won't save now that I've recreated it, and I've got to have my IT help me. But
awesome. No, I appreciate it. Yeah, I'm just always bummed.
I'll send my email in the group chat. So if anyone knows of someone who needs to be added, send that to me, to my email, and I will do my best to get it saved so it'll continue to send emails.
Awesome. Thanks. I appreciate it.
Yep. And then next month's meeting is going to be with Unified Police Department has a mental health unit. They are teaming up with U of U and have been responding to mental health calls. And I thought, I know that we're not just Salt Lake County here, it's all counties, but I would like them to tell us they're doing and what's working. And I don't know if maybe that would be of interest to other counties to initiate or become a part of that, because it seems to be helping. It seems like code violations go hand in hand with mental health. So making them more aware of potential clients is always a good thing, I think.
In the past, we had at one of the annual meetings, we all certified in mental health first aid.
Yeah, that was with NAMI, Utah. So this is kind of the more along the lines of criminal enforcement of violent mental health. But a lot of times what they're trying to do is stop the issues escalating that far. And I think we could help them get, people on their radar so they can get them into treatment so it never escalates to the criminal level. That's, I guess, the main goal.